This is the second part of the product structure tutorial for Adaptive Formulations 2012, and in the first part of the tutorial we covered the basic directory structure that we're using for this portion of the course, and also we had a basic introduction to structuring a wireframe for a unitized facade or some sort of prefabricated facade component, and looked a little bit at publications. So now what we're going to do is we're going to build up the product structure and make some links within that product structure, introduce the concept of links. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to make a new product in CATIA. And this product is going to be the master model. The word master model is something that sort of evolved coming out of Gary Partners, Gary Technologies, in that the master model contains all of the geometry for the project. So the first thing that we need to do when we start a project is make a new master model. One project has one master model, and that's it. So let's name it AF 2.2 master model. You'll see when I name things, I almost never use spaces in names, and the reason for that is mostly habit, but also just makes it a little bit easier in dealing with automation down the road, and dealing with strings and names. Spaces can be sometimes cause some problems, so I like to use underscores. Click OK. So here's my product. I have nothing in it. So product is a little bit like a bucket or a folder, in a sense that products don't have any geometry directly in them, but they contain parts, and parts have individual geometrical features. Products can contain other functionality that we're going to get to as we move down the course, things like parameters and formulas and publications and scenes, and other types of clash detection functionality, sectioning. There's a lot of things we can do with products, but they won't contain any geometry directly. So the first thing that we're going to do with our product is we're going to insert the wireframe that we've built earlier. Let's insert existing component. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to navigate into our product structure, and be very careful that you're grabbing the right stuff. Sometimes in courses like this, you're making several product structures over the course of the semester. Just make sure you're grabbing the right file. So this is the wireframe that we built. I'm going to click Open, and it's going to insert that wireframe in my product. Looks just the same on screen, really, as it does when I'm only working in the part, except for the tree now has got some new stuff in it. When you insert a part into an assembly, or we insert a part into a product, it gathers this new part to the name. So normally, if you remember, when you're working in a part, it's called something. In this case, we called it AF 2.2 underscore WF01, or for wireframe 01. In the product context, it has this other name. If I go to properties, you can see that I've got a part number and I've got an instance name. The part number is consistent in an assembly, and I like to name my parts the same as the file name. So when I save the file, it's going to be called this, and I like to call the part number the same as the file name. The instance name is something a little bit different, in that that is what the part is. The instance of the part is called in the context of the product, and it's a little bit easier to demonstrate what that means than talk about it. So when if I double click on my master model product and I copy Control C that part and paste it into the product again, you can see I get another one, but it says 0.2 at the end instead of 0.1. If I do it again, it's 0.3. If I do it again, it's 0.4. The instance name is incrementing according to how many it has in the assembly, basically. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 instances of that wireframe in this assembly, and just to illustrate that we actually have 4 instances of it, I can move one of them around. So if I select this one, and I can actually move it out here, and if I select this one, I can move it out here, right? I'm going to delete those for now, and we're going to go back to only having one. Just to reiterate how exactly I did that, Control C on the part, Control V on the product. So I'm pasting another part in there. And the way that I move things around in the product environment is I drag this compass onto some geometry. And you can see it wants to snap to various wires and planes that I've got in there. And I'm just going to snap it there. Now, if I want to move one of these relative to the rest of the assembly, I double click on the assembly and then click once on the part that I want to move and then pull one of the directions of that compass. So I pull the assembly off in this direction, and I can rotate around, and I can grab it, and I can move it this way, or I can move it up and down, and I can also double click that compass, and I can move it with variables in this dialog box here, and I can move it by increment. So this is actually quite useful sometimes. So if I want to move it along the W, which is basically up and down, I can change the increment, let's say, to 500 and just click like that. Or I can change this V to 500 and I can move it like that. Or if I want to rotate it, I can rotate it by, let's say, 30 degrees at a time. Right? So now I have two instances of this wireframe in my assembly, and one is rotated relative to the other one. I'm going to delete that. Let's just stick with one wireframe for now. It's plenty of complexity for us to deal with for today. So that should illustrate to you basically what the concept of instances are in a product assembly. The next thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to build up geometry for an individual panel in this facade. So as I said earlier, this wireframe is built up with a number of divisions. I guess we have 12 different panels here. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a parametric prefabricated panel assembly for one unit. And the end goal is to have that unit all built up with all of its solids and all of its parametric behavior and all of its detailing, and make a reusable template out of that that we can instantiate into this wireframe. And when you do that kind of reuse in CATIA, you're able to bring along drawings. You can bring along a lot of functionality that CATIA has in the product context for reuse. So it's a little bit like some of the other concepts in reuse, UDFs, power copies that we dealt with earlier in the semester, except we're sort of scaling it up in complexity, and that we're able to take an entire assembly with a wireframe and 15 different parts and some drawings and whatever else we want to put in that assembly, and instantiate that as a component across this facade. And for this workflow, we're going to build one part per part, and what that means is that one part contains one individual thing that gets fabricated. So modeling for fabrication, really CATIA is kind of unparalleled in its ability to model for fabrication, and this is the reason why, essentially, is that this way of structuring documents allows you to build up individual parts for fabrication. So if my steel has to go to one fabricator, I can send off all the steel parts. My aluminum goes to another fabricator, I can send off all those parts, and they can be fabricated, and then the assembly model determines the relationships between those different manufacturing processes. All right. So let's insert a new product again. And what we're doing here is we're inserting a product that is going to contain everything for one panel. So I'm going to double click again at my top level master model, insert new product. It shows up in the tree. And what we're going to want to do is name it, and let's call this AF 2.2 unit. I don't know, I'm just naming it something for now, unit A template. And that's my part number, and I'm just going to paste it into this variable here for the component instance name, but after it I've got a .1. And I'm going to click OK. All right. So now we've got your basic product structure. When you're in the product environment, you have a lot of files open, and it's very different than working in any other software. Where right now, actually, we are working with 3 separate files. It can get very confusing and complex to manage where all these things are getting saved. So there's an actual tool for that in CATIA, and it's called File Save Management. And Save Management is showing us, I've got a couple of new parts. Remember, we made the master model product. We haven't saved that yet. We have the wireframe, which we made earlier, and we inserted. So I only have that open right now, and it's telling me it's open, but it's already saved in this location. And I also have this Unit A template cat product. So I'm going to save as. And the first thing I'm going to save is my master model. So if I highlight that, click Save As, I'm going to save it here. And if I do that, it's going to automatically propagate everything else in here into the same folder location, which can be good or bad. You may actually want this Unit A template cat product to be in a different location, which we actually do. So I'm going to highlight that and save as, and I'm actually going to put it in units in here. All right. Now I'm gonna click cancel because I already have these things all pre-baked in the folders, but you would click OK and it's going to save out all of your files. Right. Okay, so now in this template folder, we're going to insert a new part, and that new part is going to be the local wireframe for one individual panel in this assembly. And that local wireframe is going to control things at the level of the panel that are not controlled at the global level of the entire facade. So there might be some offsets, there might be some rotations, there might be some individual unique places where maybe we have to have a vent coming through the facade, or maybe we have a door, or maybe you know, there's a big panel that needs a different size structural beam or something unique thing. So you know, this whole structuring of master models is an exercise in, you know, trying to maintain control at the highest level possible while accounting for unique conditions at the level of a local panel. And those conditions can be either responding to program, responding to clashes, structural needs, or whatever we might want to do. So let's make a new wireframe at this level. So it's insert. So just to back up for a second, what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on this product. So the AF 2.2 Unit A template product that we made. Double click that, insert, new part. And I'm just going to click yes here. What it's asking me is where I want my origin, but I'm not going to really worry about the origin at this point. It's going to put the origin at the origin of the overall project, which is okay for now. So I'm going to click yes. So what happened is now in my tree, I've got a new part. And that part looks like any other part. It's blank, and I'm going to have to name it something. So let's name it, name the part number, AF 2.2 Unit A wireframe. And remember, I also have to name the instance here. Now, mind you, like we're doing quite a bit of manual work, and everybody's always enamored with automation and what we can do with automation. Every single step here can be automated if you're working in a very repetitive way. So if you're in a company where you're always building the same kind of template and you're always you know, setting up the same kind of structures, all of this can be automated with Visual Basic. Sometimes it can be automated with you know, the native CATIA knowledgeware language. But for now, you know, just the fundamental build of this, we should be doing it manually until we understand exactly what we're doing. So there we have our wireframe, and we have now we have a new part. So we're going to want to go to Save Management and take care of, in Save Management, take care of where we're saving that wireframe. So the wireframe is going to be saved in the units folder. So we have an individual unit template folder. We're going to click Save. I'm hitting cancel because I already have these things built, which I will show you in a moment. let's zoom in on this wireframe. And we got to figure out now, as a designer, oftentimes when you get to this level in a project, you've already designed the details and you've designed kind of what you want the system to do. So we wouldn't be making this stuff up on the fly. But today we are. So I think what we're going to want to control, just to illustrate the concepts here, is let's say that the offset, we're going to create an offset of these edges inward from this on the level of this plane, and we're going to say that that is controlled locally at the level of the panel. For some reason, we'd want that to be different for every panel. If we back up in the semester a little bit, we could do something where the panel edge offset could be controlled by an attractor point somewhere in the main wireframe, and those kind of formulas can be built into this workflow also at the assembly level. But for now, let's just keep it simple. So let's insert geometrical set, and what we're going to do now is we're going to make something called a contextual link. And there's a lot of different kinds of links in CATIA that can be very confusing, and really it just kind of takes some experience in working with links to understand the finer points of that. But for now, we're only going to make one kind of link, and it's going to be called a contextual link. And what that means is that in the context of this master model, we are going to link to some specific geometry in wireframe 01. So we're going to establish a link between our unit wireframe and our global wireframe, pulling in some specific geometry. And really, I think the easiest way to do that, to maintain an understanding, control over where the links are, is to select the specific geometry that you want to link to and paste it into your local wireframe. So the first step to doing that is you got to make sure that we're in the part context. So double click the part, and just to be sure, make sure that your tools are showing up over here as they would when you're in generative wireframe design or part design. And what we're going to do is we're going to select this, 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 and this. Just graphically right on screen. I've just held down Control and I've selected all those. I'm going to right click on the part itself and click Paste Special, and that should be working. Let's try again. Paste Special as result with link. And a new node is going to show up in the tree, and it's going to be called External References, which is exactly what it says it is, in that it has a set of references that are linked to this wireframe up here. These are called contextual links, and the geometry exists in this part, but it's not editable in that part. So if you want this geometry edited, you have to edit it at the wireframe, the global wireframe level, and then these links will update. So if we change the length of all these lines up here in the wireframe, the global wireframe, they would automatically update in our local wireframe. One other way to grab a link like that is to look in these publications here. Remember, we published all this geometry in the previous video tutorial. And I also want unit A plane, because that is the rotated plane that exists here that defines the individual panel surface. So I'm going to Control C, and I'm going to right click, Paste Special as result with link. Okay. And now another piece of geometry showed up here. So those are links. Those are contextual links in this context. If I hide that wireframe, the global wireframe, you can see that I have these 5 pieces of geometry in my file. And they're here, but I can't do anything with them. I can link to them, I can create geometry on top of these, and it will work, but I can't edit these components. They're actually just pasted in from another part. Okay. So let's do some really quick geometry, and just to show you a little bit how it works. Make an intersection between this plane and this line, an intersection between this plane and this line. So I just made 2 intersections, and now let's make a individual curve from here to here. Click OK. Alright. Now I have some geometry that's built on top of other geometry that is actually a contextual link from another part. So what happens now is if I update the master model wireframe, so I go back up to my main level wireframe and I have this parameter here. Remember, I have the panel angle parameter. If I adjust that to 10 degrees, my panel rotated, and you can see here that this geometry turned red. And what that means is that the wireframe, the individual unit wireframe, is telling me that its links have changed. So when things turn red, it means it needs an update. You'll see the geometry that I built on top of those links has this little swirl symbol next to it, and that means that it needs to be updated. So when I double click on the master model, you can see that my geometry then is updated. So those links are intact, and everything I do downstream now, when I say downstream, I mean downstream from the master wireframe. Everything I build on top of that is linked in context to that wireframe. It's a powerful concept that is very, very important in CATIA modeling, and it's very unique to modeling in the CATIA environment. It's really what makes this software special in a lot of ways, is the ability to do this. And oftentimes these assemblies are being controlled very carefully at multiple levels in an organization, whereby somebody at a higher level in management is controlling the overall wireframe and taking care of that, and individual people are building templates for individual units, and if the global wireframe is updated, everything downstream updates from there. So there's a couple of settings that I want to point you out to, and then I'm going to close this video, and we'll do one more third video showing how to constrain some components onto that wireframe. So if I go to Tools, Options, what we want to do is make sure that things are updating automatically. It could very well be that when you are working and you double click on your master model, it doesn't update automatically. We want to make sure it does. So if I go to my under Mechanical Design node, Assembly Design, General, make sure that the automatic update is clicked here. Make sure it says automatic, not manual. And then under Part Infrastructure, there's another update. So these two different settings at the part level, the automatic update just means that when you're in a part, everything updates automatically. And then at the assembly design level, it means that everything updates automatically. Make sure those two are checked. Click OK. And you should see that update behavior, just like you saw just now. So with that, what we just did, just to review, is we built a master model product. We inserted the global wireframe. We built a product for an individual unit, and we built a local wireframe with some links. So I'm going to close the video and then open up with the final portion of it.